All right, welcome YouTubers. Going over some data. I've got 1985 through 2015, although I have to put a caveat on that. The last two teams on 2015 didn't come through, so there's only 30 teams. But for 30 years of data, you should get a good idea. So basically, this is from covers.com, or I call that game time data or game time lines. You can see I've got just over 14,996 results. So divide that by 2 and you get the number of games. Like I said, I was short a couple in this last season. I'll have to go back and redo that. But for the purposes of this video, which I'm going to talk about dogs and favorites and what the results have been. I'll talk a little bit about teasers and then money lines and stuff like that. Just as you're evaluating your handicappers, I've got some videos out there on stuff you should and shouldn't look for. But there's sort of a dichotomy in all things, because if you look at a particular season, you tend to, winning teams tend to cover, and of course winning teams seem to be favorites. And there's some belief out there that that's true, because you look at a season, you say, okay, New England, any given Seattle, those are teams that are typically 13-3 type teams, Green Bay, and they tend to do a little bit better than average on the ATS. Where your teams that are Cleveland's that are like 2-14, they tend not to win. They don't be like 10-6, ATS. They end up, so there's a correlation sort of in there. So you always believe that you want to bet favorites and you want to bet, winning teams in the public and stuff like that. And a lot of money goes on winning teams in the public because those are your favorite teams, like your Dallases and your Pittsburghs and everybody else. But in 1985 to 2015, I've got the ATS line, so what it was on covers, and I've broken it into away and home. But here's your lines, and I've stopped at 10, right? So I said anything less than -10, so a heavy favorite, -11, -10.5, -15, -26, whatever you want to call it. And then every segment between -10 and +10, I've broken in a half digit. That's what a normal line is. And then I've got heavy dogs, right? And what you'll see, that if you're a heavy favorite, away, you were 48 and 65, and home, you were 288 and 339. So both of those are heavy losers. These bets out here where I've got the net money are 2,000 a game. So you either win, I'm just going to do -110 payouts. So it's either plus 18 if you win, with the VIG taken out, or you lose 2,000 if you lose the game. So it's not even Steven money. That's not the real world. So both of these would have been, interestingly, net losers, especially super home favorites. They're in the 45 percentile. This is a percentile of the total, and the percentile away and percentile home. So all of those are well below the 52.4 that you would need, percentage 52.4%, sort of break-even point. So basically, if you bet throughout the years on heavy favorites, you would have lost a ton of money. And then you can see, even at -10, -9, it's not until you get to -8 where you got a brief glimpse of -8 at home. You would have been 47 and 42, and you would have won a little bit of money over those 30 years, just above the 52. So you can see that there's not much until you get down to -4.5. Anything -5 and above is heavy losers. The corollary to that, which are heavy dogs, if you got a greater than plus 10 or more than +10, you were 338 and 286, almost the corollary of what you got up there, away. And here's your home numbers, which are 68, and both of these are winners. So you would have won 42,000 on the away games, 24,000 on the home games, and been 54.8% total, 54.2, and so well above that 52.4. So dogs, despite our big dogs, are actually big winners, right? And as I go back, I've colored these in green, even though some of them are losers. This is home dogs, and that adds up to 69,000. That's the biggest before you have a big break. So anything 5 or above at home dogs are generally good bets, and you can spot bet within there, because there were a couple losers at 5.5 and 6. And even on the away, there's some winning spots in there, some losing spots. Of course, a dog at +3 away is something that, usually get and give 3 points for being away. So that's why I drove the lines here at -3 and at home and +3. But you can see in general, there's a little bit more on the dog side than the home side. There's a small pocket of favorites at -4.5 and -4 where you'd have some net winnings. So it's always something to take a look at when that game gets around that number. But that's it for the lines. So teasers are a different story. Usually you can play any number of games, but usually you're picking 2 teams, and you're going to tease those points up. Each team gets an additional 6 points in those games, and you have to win both those games to get. And usually that payout is -110 for a 2-team 6-point teaser. What that really means to get your 52.4 is you really need to have 2 teams at a 72.4% chance of winning. So one game at 72 and the other game at 72. 0.72 times 0.72 is 0.52. And if you win them both, that's your win rate. So you need to be looking at 72.4. Of course, anytime you're getting a 6-point tease, these are all going to be winners, net winners. You're not dealing with the same scale of a 50-50 or a 52.4. You're going to have to be looking at that 72.4. So same type of thing, same line structure that I have out here. And if you are a heavy favorite with the tees, it went up significantly from 54 to 61, but still nowhere near enough to pick 2 games and end up at 52.4%. But you can see there's some favorite pockets out here where you won money, or you're hitting the 72.4. So these are just kind of randomly spread out there. And on the dog side, it's not obvious there either. So you tend to get blown out, right, as dogs. So just not a lot of winnings there either. So anybody who picks a lot of teasers, it's very sporadic. There's a little string in here and maybe some strings up here where you could, in the 0 to, or at least the 1 to 2 point dog, and you got to think about money lines when you're 1 or 2 point dogs or 3 point dogs. But anybody who picks a lot of teasers, there's just not as many opportunities out there. Therefore, I wouldn't necessarily go with a bunch of teasers. That's the math on teasers. I've included the money line, but again, there's just not a lot. We know traditionally, I think I still have a video on being a office pool hero, one of my earlier videos. I think I transferred it over to this Great Dane site. Is that the only hot spot is really when you get like +3. You're a +3 dog. That's a good place because I know you're only going to win 42.4% of the time, but you only need like numbers wise like a 36 or 38%. So you actually have a little bit of advantage. Everywhere else you kind of have a small disadvantage. So I know you win, when you're a heavy favorite, you win over 83% of the time, but you need to get like 85% to break even. So that's what I mean. Everything is within a few points until you get to this little dog region here. So there is some truth that you want to take, +3 on the money lines, but just don't play money lines. It's really tough. If you can play point spreads, play point spreads and ATSs and get some even money. I had one more thing. So this one I dumbed it down to 2014 because that's when I figured out I was missing a couple teams in the 2015 data. Again, I apologize. I'll get 2016 data if you ever want to contact me at picks@greatdanepicks.com, and for some low fee, send me some money and I'll give you all the data through 2016 when I get that done. But here's the best teams since 1985 to 2014, sort of Super Bowl appearances, Super Bowl wins. But Denver and San Francisco both were 288 and 191. And this is actual, not ATS, right? So this is what their records were, and followed by New England. So these are people, you're winning 60% of your games. But their ATS numbers were not nearly as good. The only one that was good up there was New England. And Baltimore's another one. So, I guess you really have to look at hot teams and not hot teams. But this is just an example out there that, these winning teams don't necessarily drive great ATS through those years. And the same thing, it just doesn't work that way, that you can just pick like 13 and 2 teams. So if you get a lot of pickers that get, I know this doesn't help you either way. Anything in the greens are the opposite of that, which the opposite of 52.4 is 47.6. So if you're going to bet against, so these are the teams that you would, bet against down here. And there's a few more. So there's some strategy in betting against terrible teams, but it's just not, you're not going to win and lose trying to pick wins and losers. You got to do the matchups. So if you see somebody who picks a lot out of New England, a lot of this year it's Dallas, and some of my pickers that I see do that, they just, you're riding a little wave, but it's not the long-term goal to success. The long-term goal to success is usually in your dogs, and that's what I highlighted here. All right, thank you.